Every description of God that I've heard holds God to be all-powerful, very typical, and all good. And I see earthquakes and tornadoes and disease, childhood leukemia, and I see all of this and I say, I do not see evidence of both of those being true simultaneously. If there is a God, the God is either not all-powerful or not all good.
I think we might have to get ourselves a new intro. That one's getting a little bit tired. Neil deGrasse Tyson, of course, kicking off this podcast live on YouTube of an atheist, a believer, and a pastor walk into a bar. G'day and welcome. I'm your host, Peter Rowe. Great to have your company on this 14th day of August 2024, one of the few dry days we've had for a little while. So it's nice to see a bit of sunshine around. Just gone 8 o'clock Australian Western Standard Time, broadcasting from Perth, Western Australia. If you haven't already followed us on Facebook, could you please, so we can get ourselves 100 followers, and then Facebook will allow us to podcast live as well as on YouTube. That would be fabulous if you can help us out. I need to give a quick explanation too as what happened last week's podcast for those of you who missed it. Ironically, we did actually do the podcast. In fact, we sat talking for about 2 hours and then realized that we weren't actually going to air due to a technical glitch. The technical glitch at this moment we will name Rich meant it didn't go to air, even though we talked for over an hour and a half. So, yeah, to no one except us. But Rich is downloading it as we speak, and it'll be available if you want to check it out from episode 32 last Wednesday. For all intents and purposes, it looks like everything was working fine, but we're going to do it. We're going to get it back on screen so you can see if you want to check it out. So sorry about that. That was episode 32. Tonight is 33. For the past few weeks, we've presented a new part of the program. It's a very special guest, people who are known to those of us in WA, but it's also important for the rest of the world. We'll also find them interesting. We have someone who I'm sure you will find very, very interesting. We've spoken to Bob Moormill and John Lewis. We're going to do that tonight. I know nothing of this person's beliefs, but hopefully we're going to find out more. I'll introduce them shortly. The one thing we share globally is belief. We'll find ourselves coming back to that subject all of the time on this podcast. It's a very broad brush because it seems to interest everyone, ranging from just a basic interest in things like spirits, crystals, astrology, lucky numbers, tarot cards, palm reading, touching wood for good luck, touch wood, all seemingly harmless. But so many have a deep obsession with the mystical, deep stuff like indulging in mediums in an attempt to read the future, to being convinced of the existence of the supernatural, like ghosts, for instance, talking to past relatives and claiming a response. And I've just lost my screen. That's really interesting. Hang on a minute. It's come back. Wow, thank you. To believing in reincarnation, if you're a Hindu, to believe that the Christian God can heal you and can of your life, like perhaps the fatalists who would believe life is predestined with or without God. It seems we're pretty obsessed with things we don't really know a lot about. On this podcast, we try and dig down into what makes us tick. Why? Because I, for one, think it's an enthralling subject to talk about. And it's also like-minded people, plenty of us around. I was very much a strong believer in the Holy Spirit myself, afterlife, healing, the power of God. Many from claims from that of the Pentecostal church. Thankfully, I moved away from that world of the unknown to the world of evidence. Now I find there are more questions than answers. If you're at home watching live on YouTube, please get involved and be a part of this podcast. We love hearing from you and your thoughts, ideas, and questions. So let me introduce our panel for tonight. Rich is the man that kicked off this podcast with me 32 episodes ago. Thankfully, he's still with us and offers a very enlightened view of his faith. There's Jace, a man from the non-suburbs, from way down in Western Australia, somewhere, I don't know where he's from, a fellow non-believer. And Suresh Rajan, who may be joining us. We'll wait and see. We certainly hope he comes along and has a chat with us. Welcome, gents.
Hello. It's good to be here.
And now for our very special guest. There's not too many politicians I'd invite on this podcast, to be honest. In fact, I could probably only think of one more. I've interviewed
you said last week that Trump knocked you back.
That's right. I've interviewed many politicians over many years on radio without really enjoying any of them, to be honest. They all seem to be cut from the same cloth, but not this man. He has a job to do, and that is to be a politician, which entails getting stuff done for us, the voters. There are plenty of other politicians who also get stuff done, but it's the humanity that separates our guest from so many others who have forgotten that they are also people, parents, brothers, sisters, uncles and aunts, fathers and mothers, daughters and sons. And playing those roles should be no different to being a human first and a politician second, while being one and the same. He is the member for Mandurah, the leader of the House, and Minister for Culture and the Arts, Sports and Recreation, as well as International Education and Heritage. Wow, that is a mouthful. In his spare time, he sleeps. Welcome, David Templeman, to the podcast. G'day, mate.
G'day there, and good to join you. And I'm intrigued about what the next hour and a bit is going to be like. But thank you for the introduction.
Well, we'll assume you've already set up an escape module of some description. Who knows? Who knows?
You're very kind.
Oh, mate, not at all, not at all. David, we'll find out a lot about you tonight as well, but we want to know a little about the man. Did you see yourself as being different in the way you conduct yourself with people that you serve, as opposed to a lot of other pollies? Can you answer that question without bagging anyone out?
No, but look, I think there was an old lady, I still remember, she's passed on now, Vida Williams. And I always remember Vida saying to me when I decided to put myself forward to be the member for Mandurah, she was from a conservative part of the world, Narrogin. She knew my grandparents who were farmers in Narrogin. And old Vida said to me, just before the election of 2001, she said, "Now, David, I'll vote for you only if you don't change. If you change, I'll never vote for you again." Now, Vida was the typical, Country Women's Association president. Yep. She was just a beautiful soul, very much like my nana, who was a farmer, as I said, in Narrogin. And I never forgot it. And she said, and what she was talking about was being genuine. And, it doesn't matter whether you got letters after your name, whether you've been to university or not. For me, it's just simply about whether or not you're genuine. And I hope that, when I came into this job nearly 24 years ago, that I'm the same person that I was when I went into it. I've been blessed by a whole range of experiences that have helped shape me during that time. But at the end of the day, I just hope I'm genuine. And
well, you are. You are, and that's one of the reasons why, your character and personality and standing in when I was in Mandurah in radio, it's why you appealed to me. But let me ask you this then. Why does it seemingly be so difficult for other politicians to be genuine? As I said, I've interviewed federal politicians, so they're coming out of my ears, everyone from Malcolm Turnbull to a whole bunch of, including the big man from Queensland, Clive Palmer. That was an interesting chat. But the genuine part of it seems to be impossible to continue with. Why is it so difficult? What's so easy for you?
Well, it's not like it's so easy or difficult. I just think that it's how you it's the language you use. It's how you approach questions. See, I have no problem saying I don't know. Mm-hmm. And I think more members of parliament or people who are in leadership positions should be prepared to do that. It doesn't mean you say sorry or apologise all the time. Just but be prepared and be ready to say, "Hey, look, I actually don't really know about that, and I need to give some thought to that before I respond to you." Now, of course, Rowie, in media, they hate that because the modern media now, honestly, it's 24-hour media. Mm-hmm. They want the instant response. They want the, and of course, if you don't give the right one, or you give a response that's going to be sort of seen as, sitting on the fence or opting out, then they don't like that either. But I think there are times when you actually got to say, and I say it, if I genuinely don't have a response immediately, I'll say, look, I'm going to have to think about that. The other thing is, you don't have to have a view about everything.
No, that's
so good.
You don't. I mean, quite frankly, It's one of the reasons why I've watched a few of the debates and the way society's talked about a whole range of stuff over the last probably 10 years. And what I liked about, for example, the marriage equality debate was, in the end, it didn't matter whether you were a strong yes or a strong no. I think the majority of people just went, hey, I'm really not too concerned about somebody else's attraction to, male or female. If that's their thing, that's their thing. And I think that's how people voted in the end. And I think I think that vote surprised some people.
Look, it did.
Pleasantly surprised them.
It's the question, isn't it? How does it impact on my life? And of course, the answer is it doesn't. You choose to
Absolutely.
make it. But people in radio, politicians in radio, hated me as well, David. I never interviewed you, I don't think, in person. But I refused to listen to the bullshit answers that I just kept getting over and over and over again. And particularly Malcolm Turnbull, who backed down in the end when I just would not let him get away with the answer he was giving me. It was about NBN or something. It was interesting. They didn't like me much then, but that's okay. I wasn't there to be liked. I was there to get to the bottom of issues. So you said you grew up in Narrogin. Tell us about your upbringing. Paint us a picture of the Templeman household.
Well, I was born in Northern, but spent a lot of time in Narrogin because, of course, the grandparents were farmers in Narrogin, and like lots of people in my, I was 60s, born in the mid 60s, 1965. So holidaying in the 70s was with your grandparents on the farm. So they very much shaped me in terms of, I suppose, the ethics of working hard and also actually enjoying the moments. One of the beautiful things about growing up, I reckon, in the 70s and 80s, or particularly the 70s, was no one seemed to have a lot. Most people were particularly the same. They were, on the same financially, they were the same, particularly from Northern where I was born. So there was no this sort of thing of, the bloody buggers up in that hill there, they've got more than I have, or, they're the richies or whatever. Everyone seemed to be the same. And the grandparents were very influential for me. So much so they still influence me today, even though both of my sets of grandparents are gone. But I do these I call them heritage things. Like every year in January, I bottle fruit, which my colleagues think I'm mad. But I mean, I go and get this heap of fruit and I bottle them in the old Vicola jars. And I just have this great pride of carrying on a tradition that my grandmother taught me. And I stack up the pantry full of these bottles of apricots and peaches. But I love it.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that's one of the most gratifying experiences to start the year. But Northern, spent all my time outside because, TV was a bit dicey because we lived under a hill and the reception was pretty bad. Play was the most important thing. And I still believe this today with kids. Play is critical, and imagination. That's where I think I got my love of comedy, my love of looking at life through the lens of, there are so many times, quite frankly, and I found this being Minister for Sport and Recreation particularly, because I'm the most unsporting person you'd ever meet. And Mark McGowan made me the sports minister. And I looked at him when I said, are you really serious? Normally the sports minister is somebody who was an ex-Olympian like, Peter Watson or someone like that, or Tuck Waldron, who was a magnificent sports minister. He was, he has his pedigree was, country cricket and country football. Mia Davies, she was a sports minister. Her pedigree was netball. Mine was hopeless sporting prowess, but of course I sort of take on more of the commentator role. And now I find myself, and it's terrible because I now find myself, even when I'm doing media stuff, that I sort of lapse into that sort of, almost cross between HG and that. And it's a hard thing to stop because now I find myself talking like that and saying things like, "Isn't it marvelous?" and "Isn't it wonderful?" Wow. And it's almost, and it comes, and I can't control it sometimes. But observing life, I loved comedy. I loved the comedians of the the 70s and the 80s. I was a Jerry Lewis fan, for example, and I loved the English comedies because that's the only stuff we saw on TV was Benny Hill and Dave
Monty
Allen
Python.
and all of them. So they helped shape who I was as a kid. And I mean, I was a bit weird. I didn't play sport, but I used my imagination a lot, and I was, did a lot of things around the school. One year, because I loved horse racing, and one year I convinced the principal of the high school that I went to, Northern, to let me do a phantom race call over the PA, and I used to be really good, and and he let me. I had the list of that year's runners. And just before the race, he let me go, and I said, "Look, I won't do the whole 3.5 minutes because it's a 3.5-minute call, but I did the last, I think the last 40 seconds, and they thought it was real." And I tell you what, that was a great thing for the principal to do because that was a risk.
Absolutely.
But and as I say, you've got to be prepared to take a few risks too. Don't and ask. I mean, I just thought, well, I'm going to ask him. And I always tell kids now, when I have them, to lunch at Parliament House, or I have them up for, or chat to them, I always tell them, don't be afraid to ask, because someone might say no, but they just
don't tell my kids that.
Can you remember 20 seconds of your 40-second call that you can just give us a sound of that amazing?
Oh yeah, well, see, one year, actually last year we had the big treasury, this is why I love seeing the funny side or the opportunities. And Mark McGowan put down his first budget, and we always do this big business thing afterwards, and all these, the big end of town comes to a function on the Thursday night of the budget spin. Anyway, I said to him, and he said, "Well, can you do a funny little speech?" And I said, "Okay." And I didn't tell him quite what I did. So in the end, I did a race call, and I was I did a race call, and I had the various ministers riding various horses. So
I think I've heard
it. Quigley was the great one, because Quigley was he was on a horse called Old Sue. He was on a horse. Clive Palmer was on a horse called I'll Sue You, and Quigley was on a horse called I'll Sue You Too. Around the outsider, and I did. I'll sue you. I'll sue you's going hell for leather against I'll sue you too. It's I'll sue you. I'll sue you too. Coming up from behind. I sue you. And it was that sort of thing. And I used to love it, because I used to go. My first job was as a 14-year-old was at the trots in Northam, and my job was to write down the order that the horses came. And I got to know the commentator who used to commentate them, called Stuart Shetton, and he was the commentator. And I used to have a chat to him in between races, and yeah. So I wanted to be a race caller. I wanted to be a jockey. I wanted to do all these things when I was younger, but I was scared of horses in the end, so I didn't become a jockey.
On your to the right of you, David, you might see a window down the side of your screen, which has comments and stuff in there. So intermittently, there'll be a comment, and I'll jump in and just mention it. Fenton Mully, who is from California, is one of our regular listeners to the podcast, and he's just jumped in saying, "How you going, mate? We are fabulous. Nice to hear from you again, Fenton. You're in danger tonight from California to possibly learn a little bit about culture with the gentleman we have."
Ooh, you got hard tonight, Rowie.
Oh, absolutely. We might even be able to squeeze a little bit of a song. I don't know if Rich and Jace are aware, but one of the great things that David is famous for, or infamous for, is singing in Parliament. It's become a kind of an interesting thing. So we might be able to get a note or two out of him shortly. David, before I hand over to the other guys for questions and stuff, I just got one more. That is, do you consider yourself to be a spiritual man of any description?
Yeah, look, I am. And I've never been a church-going person. In fact, I used to laugh early on, because Mum and Dad were always. I was christened as an Anglican, And Mum and Dad used to always get the Northern Anglican Parish newsletter once a month, but never go to church.
That would have
They
been
never
riveting
go to
reading.
any of those ceremonial things. But of course, I was always intrigued by. I've always been intrigued by religion in all of its forms, and I think it comes from a respectful aspect. I actually quite enjoy going into a church. I am intrigued about the Islamic faith. I don't know much about it, but I'm intrigued about that. The history of the English system, our monarchy. I'm intrigued by all of that. I describe myself as and this is a bit of a worry for the Labor Party people, but I describe myself as a Republican with monarchist tendencies. And I'm fair dinkum about it. I actually do have some very a soft spot for the monarchy.
Oh, look, absolutely. I totally understand that. I mean, I'm completely against the whole concept of the monarchy, but when you've spent so much of your life, the Queen, here's a side story, but the Queen visited my father's primary school in Broome in 1964. So she came to the primary school. We were chosen in Broome. It was amazing. And I remember my brother, bit of bias perhaps, was given a chrome shovel to dig a hole so that she could plant a tree. And then the little girl was given also a chrome shovel, and she dug a hole to plant a tree. And a man called Tietzel, I think he was some big wig in the council, grabbed the shovel off my brother and dug the hole himself just so he could steal the limelight from. It was. But yes, I mean, when you've been exposed to the royal family for most of your life, I mean, it's very hard to not have a soft spot, regardless of what they stand for. So I'm pretty much in your boat. I too would love for us to break away, but there is a soft spot for sure.
Yeah, I don't think we'll see it for a long, long time. You know,
No.
just a quick one on the Queen, and this is why I love stories. I mean, I think, and you know, this podcast and other entities like this are great because there are so many stories out there. My dad told me the story: the Queen came to Northam not long after she was she ascended to the throne. I think would have been 54 too, probably, or 54, or whenever the first time she came, and they did a lap around Jubilee Oval, which is the big football oval in Northam. Now back then, there's no security like they have now. But the local fellas. A couple of the local fellows jumped in I think it was an old Singer. And the story goes, the Queen did a lap. There was the whole of the town was out. The Queen did a lap, waving, and there's a couple of dignitaries in some of the cars. And as the cavalcade left the Jubilee Oval, these young fellas in a Singer then did their lap.
Beautiful.
Of Jubilee Oval, waving and of course had a huge reception. And I thought, well, how beautiful.
Yep.
How beautiful. Now there's the stories of, country WA. There's the stories of that larrikinism, I suppose, that sort of is a bit of a trait of Australian psyche. And I just love that. I mean, I think those, of course, you can't do those sorts of things. You can't even get close to them now because of the security requirements. But I reckon that's a beautiful story.
That's why it was so great having Bob Morville on. I mean, wow, talk about a man with stories about Kalgoorlie. He was just, if you get a chance to see, the link I sent you through is actually has all of the podcasts on there with Bob, the one that he did a couple of weeks back. It was fascinating. Gentlemen, Jason and Rich, anything you would like to add to our discussion with Mr. Templeman?
Rich, may I go first?
Go for it, mate.
All righty. Two questions there, but I'll pose one and then come back to the other one a little bit later on. You went into politics. Did you go into politics because you wanted to share your values? And those values that you have, are they, and I know this is going to be a difficult one for you to answer because I have a little bit of a history with the Labor Party as well. Are those values 100% in line with the Labor Party, or do you find yourself compromising more than you'd like to?
Well, first of all, of course, everyone will tell you they went into politics to make a difference. I love that line. I went into. You want to know the honest, real reason? Before I was in politics, I was a teacher to start with, and then I got, and Rowie might know this fella. I met a great bloke called Gary Jones. He was a local bank Johnny in Mandurah, one of the most talented musicians I've ever seen or met. Jones and I struck up he was a bank Johnny, I was a teacher. Jones and I struck up a conversation one time. We got involved in some local theatre here in Mandurah, and then one night we said, "Oh, let's start a little, a little act." So we decided to, because we both lived in Hall's Head, we thought we'd become the Hall's Head hippies, and that was our act. Now our act was basically two hippies dressed as hippies, and all we did was take the songs of the 60s, 70s, and 80s and mince the words. Change the words. Anyway, we started out, and this was just for fun. And there was two local women had started a wine club in Mandurah at the Hall's Head Tavern. And she said, "Oh, can you come along and be the act?" And we said, "Well, look, we've only got 3 songs. And the first song was a song called I've Got Pubes, Babe, which was to that song,
Chrissy Hines.
Not Bonnie and
Oh,
Clyde.
it was originally Sonny Bono.
Sonny and Cher,
Sonny and Cher, yeah.
So that was one of our songs. So there was only 3. So we came on, and of course, the wine club, most wine clubs should be about the taste of the wine. It was just really a guzzling club, really. Right. So, of course, the crowd was very on side when we finally got on. They loved us. And then they were yelling out at the end, more. And we said, we haven't bloody got any more. We'll do our 3 songs again in reverse. And that's where the Hall's Head Hippies was born. Now, we went on for about 6 or 7 years. This is the mid-90s. 6 or 7 years. We used to travel around country WA, all through Western Australia, lots of gigs, lots of corporates. And the only reason why, the main reason why I got into politics is I said to Jonesy, towards the start of 1999, let's take this act over east, because that's where you've got your big audiences,
Yeah.
And Jonesy said, "Oh, well, look, mate, I've fallen in love with this woman, and I'm going to marry her, and she doesn't want me to leave." And I said, "Oh, shit, well, that's no good." So in the end, I said, "Well, look, I'll go into politics."
Okay.
As you do.
I'll have a go.
Very similar.
It was the old doors.
absolutely.
It was the old
Natural.
doors, the 2 doors. Do I go there? That one's closed in my face. Thanks, Jonesy. So I'll go down there. But so in terms of decision making, that was the main decision. But I did enjoy. See, I've always enjoyed people, so I did enjoy, and I don't mind having a bit of a debate about stuff. So I thought, I'll give this gig a go. I had a go in 1993 when I stood for the Parliament the first time. Well, of course, that was the worst timing. I mean, again, sporting coming through, worst timing of all. The Labor Party pendulum was so far swinging, so far against them, it almost went off the scale. And I, little green boy from Northern, decides to stand at the worst possible time. I got beaten, but I got beaten. I thought, if ever I run again, I'll never get beaten again. And I was right. But yeah, so I could have gone off into the eastern states and done the RSLs and all of those clubs down the seaboard. But Jonesy got married, fell in love, and I said, "Okay, well, that's no longer an option."
How did you get the pre-selection though? Like, did you literally just walk into it, or was it a contested seat, or was it a safe seat?
No. Well, it was a safe Liberal seat at the time, but I was deputy mayor, so I was on the council.
Right, you had profile.
So I thought, oh well, if I'm not the mayor of the day, is a lovely bloke, Keith Holmes, and Rowie, you'd remember Keith, this lovely fella. And he was he was Australian, but he had a bit of an English voice. And I always remember him. He saw me at it. We did a gig as the hippies in Mandurah. We very rarely did anything in Mandurah. We sort of kept away from Mandurah because, I was the deputy mayor. And I remember we did a gig and I think we might have sung I've Got Pubes, Babe at an event that the mayor was at. And I remember him saying to me afterwards, I remember him saying, "David, David, remember, you are the deputy mayor. I always think, righto, Keith, I've been told off. We won't have any more gigs in Mandurah.
Right.
Yeah, so that, but look, and
Wow.
look, I suppose at the end of the day, if you're going to do it, do something while you're there. Don't just, and I've been lucky enough. I've been, I've been committed to a number of things that I'm very proud that have been in the parliament when those things have been passed. And one of them, which is a more recent one, was the voluntary assisted dying. I had always been strongly supportive of that concept, or that opportunity that people should have to die with dignity. And I was in the middle of it. I was one of the people who, was in the debate and ultimately made the decision. And so I would hate to leave politics and think, what did you do? Oh, I just sat there and made up the numbers. Well, why would you do it? You don't want to be there to make up the numbers. I think politics now, though, is going to be more of a shorter term a career path for lots of people. I think by the nature of it, I think the volatility of the electorate, the fact that people's attitudes are influenced by a whole range of things. I think you'll find people will be in politics for shorter periods. I don't think you'll see the big, long 25, 30-year career politician in the future. I think that will go.
Now, Minister, I'm going to wear my media hat just for a second and draw you back to the question I asked.
The values,
the values. So I guess the crux of this for me is, as someone who has values, as a member of the Labor Party, and I'm sympathetic to the left of politics, how do you reconcile the differences that you have in your values with the positions that you may have to take as a member of the Labor Party?
Yeah, look, I suppose my view is that when you sign up for the Labor Party, you do sign up for a consensus approach. You have the debate, and then you form a view, or you form a view, and then that is what you prosecute. And sometimes you're not always going to be on the side of the view that's decided. I sign up for that, so I accept that. But I suppose, and look, politics is very much it is, and I think it's going to be increasingly so, the art of compromise. The nature of community now is that you're always compromised, and I always get angry. Rudd made this huge mistake, I reckon, in 2007 when he made a man like Midnight Oil's Peter Garrett the Environment Minister. That was the worst decision you could have made in terms of, for him personally, Peter personally, but also for, the environment portfolio, for example, is a very compromise. You are compromising continually, all the time. And for various reasons. But I always remember Rudd, and I remember when he announced his ministry and he gave poor old Peter and I thought, because here's a man, talking about values, here's a man who all of his life had been, pioneering the arguments against logging, against destruction of habitat, the importance of saving fauna, flora, saving a whole range of things. And there you're putting him in a position where he is actually having to compromise.
He would have looked good on paper.
If he wasn't bald when he started, he'd be threadbare by the time he finished.
Yeah, it was a bit of a nightmare, wasn't it? It was sad to watch. He even when I first heard about him going into it, I thought, this is either going to end really, really well or really, really badly. And I think the system just sort of chewed him up and spat him out, and he was left a broken man. But the oil's reformed soon after, and he's back doing what he did so well. I mean, his influence on Aboriginal rights throughout the country too was just fantastic. So just remind people, if you're watching, great to have your company tonight. Hope you're enjoying our little chat with David Templeman. Of course, he is a Labor member of a beautiful little place south of Perth, around about 70 or 80 k's away, called Mandurah, and he's in a beautiful location. But love to hear from you. If you've got a comment to make, jump on YouTube, which is where you're watching, of course. Stick it a comment like Fenton has. I'd love to hear why death with dignity is on the ballot in Australia, but not even okay to talk about in the US. Canada is very progressive on that as well. Is it possibly because Australia is more secular? That the answer to that, in short, would be yes. What's your view on that question, David?
Fenton's asked a great question. Look, I think at the end of the day, Australians have been very good traditionally. There are different pockets in history, but to separate religion from politics. There are some blimps. I mean, the DLP, Democratic Labor Party, kept the Federal Labor Party out of power for decades, and obviously strongly influenced through religion. But I think Australians more broadly, and this has changed because let's look at the stats. I mean, the stats of how many people tick the box that they're a Christian is continuing to, or of a number of faiths, continues to decline every time they do a census. But I think we, I think Australians actually naturally can separate those things. And for me, the voluntary assisted dying question was very much about people's personal view on dignity and having the opportunity to have a choice to have a dignified death. And I think they were able to separate the issues that were put quite rightfully by some of our religious entities. But I don't think they were influenced by those. I think at the end of the day, they thought, no, I think that people should have the right under certain circumstances in which to end their life in a dignified way. And the statistics, I think there's now several hundred in Western Australia that have taken that option. It is still very restrictive. Our criteria, if you like, is still restrictive. And in fact, if there's any criticism, there's lots of people who believe that it should even be more relaxed in terms of who is eligible to make that decision. I know dementia, people suffering from dementia, and those issues continue to be put by lots of people who would like to see even further reform. But to answer Fenton's question, I think we tend to be able to separate that religious from the personal view of what we think is right.
It's strange, isn't it? Because there's many issues in Australia that we're not progressive about, and that would have been one of them. I would have thought. I was quite astounded to find out. I think is it all of Australia now, or is there still a state or a territory that hasn't gone on board with this? I can't remember the last.
I think the last was Queensland. I think most states and territories now have passed voluntary assisted dying legislation. I mean, the territory was the first that wanted to do it, of course, as we know. The territory did it, and then, of course, the federal or the Commonwealth Parliament overrode it.
I mean, my mum spent 8-9 years in just the most horrendous, horrible, heartbreaking condition, for years, not knowing who we were. And it was just horrible. But by the time you're in that, of course, there's nothing you can do. You can't assist someone's death without them being, compass to be able to make that decision and sign the document. So you just have to sit there and watch her demise just going on and on and on and on. A quick death is a blessing with Alzheimer's. A long, drawn out death is just, it's hideous. It is absolutely horrendous. So that would be interesting if they could come up with some sort of a law that could somehow intervene, like someone could make a decision that the person in a vegetative state has no quality, therefore we will allow such and such to perhaps happen, and that may be something down the track. But at the moment, it's just for those people who are able to make a decision on their own by their own intellect, and so it can go forward. But thanks, Fenton. Really appreciate that question. Rich, you must be champing at the bit.
Yeah, look, it's there's been a few questions, but this one about that Fenton sort of raised, sometimes we get quite used to our Aussie politics, and we have a very different quality to what we see coming out of places like America and maybe even Europe a bit. I wonder, Dave, because you've seen the inside of politics, you've seen like a huge cross section of people. Do you think some of the things that we've got going for us in Australia is like a real Aussie egalitarianism, and because of that, we tend to view belief, I guess, and values less about some sort of dedication and loyalty to some organization, and more to the content of a real sort of egalitarian approach to everybody's beliefs. Do you think there's that kind of thing going on?
Yes. Look, the egalitarian thing is still, I think, a very strong part of the Australian psyche. I think that's why we have traditionally defended our democracy so well. I mean, we invariably still. I mean, we are one of the few countries that still requires people to compulsory turn up to vote, which is an old chestnut that is, used so well. Quite often people say, you shouldn't be compelled to vote. Well, you are only compelled to go to the polling place or engage with the polling place. You can do whatever you like. I was a scrutineer for a number of elections before I was elected, and I Jazz, you might have actually done that as well. But you watch and read some of the interesting stuff that people write on ballot papers. It's intriguing.
I was just going to say, my wife did it as well, and she said she's never seen so many drawn penises in her life.
Yes, I mean the old doodle and balls is a very popular candidate, but
He always wins.
Did they ever give
He
in?
always
That's what I
wins.
want to know.
but you see, what I love about it is I actually look at it this way: it gives you the right to whinge. Now, and so when someone tells me they don't vote, and I say, well, don't come to me with when you think you're peeved about something, because you abrogated your primary responsibility to actually register your view. The great thing about secret ballot, I don't know how you voted, but I must admit, look, see, the other thing is I found, you see, I'm lucky. I'm towards the end of my political career, so I can actually be a bit more
Risque.
fluid with my response, because there are some people who I just go. There was an older lady who I love dearly came to me the other day, and she was conspiracy theorists. And in fact, she was savagely mauled by them, I would have said, because she was espousing all. And I said to her, look, I said, honestly, you're 80 years old. You love singing. Keep singing.
Yeah.
I don't want you to go and worry yourself about whether or not your flu injections are going to kill you, or whether or not, we're being invaded by sort of these invisible things that are affecting our brain. At the end of the day, you're 80. Go and enjoy every single day, because you don't know whether it's your last, and you love singing. That's your gift. Keep doing it. I said to her, this is honest truth. I said to her, don't worry. I said, I don't want you to worry. I've known you for all these years. Go home. Don't worry.
Do you get accosted by a lot of people like that, Dave? Like, do you come across a lot of people who are vehemently conspiracy theorists and they hate you and your kind?
Yes, they do. And I think this is one of the other problems of, just in terms of how we see politicians too. I mean, the sad thing, I think, is that, and I think that's why it comes back to earlier question. A lot of politicians, people get into politics and they think they've got to actually fit a certain role. That suddenly you have to speak a certain way, present yourself a certain way, not be, and then you fit a mold that I don't think is realistic. And so, but look, you see, I'll be honest. I mean, and one of the things I learned in politics, is you still got to be honest. You can't. Well, when I say you got to be honest, you still got to say what you think, because a lot of people, I think, get in politics and of course, they sort of string someone along and, oh yes, I'm very concerned, and I think you're right, and then really you're thinking, no, I don't think you're right at all. Yeah, but I don't have the heart to tell you, because you might not vote for me. See, now I'm of the view, I tell them what I think.
Yeah.
But I can do that because I can say, like this old lady, I said, I love you. I think you're wonderful. I've known you for, I've known you since you were 60, and I'm nearly 60 now. And you have always loved to sing, and you've always been happy. Why has that changed?
Yeah.
Don't listen, or don't go on the internet and think that some bugger's going to go and pinch everything and steal everything. Don't give your password away or anything, but don't worry. We worry too much.
Yes, no, look, we do. You must be the absolute bane of so many conservative, liberal, and no doubt people in your own party, because because of your freedom and your joy and your risk, you are a threat to the very thing that they can't be, but maybe deep down inside wish they were, which makes you fantastic. I mean, that's a part of.
But Rowie, you see, I mean, this is where it comes back to Jason's question. See, I've never approached politics I actually don't honestly believe it should be as adversarial as it is.
Oh, absolutely.
Because quite frankly, I look, I see the humor in so many things, and I love stories. So I actually do think that people who have farmed all their life, for example, and they may have a different attitude. My grandfather was a member of the National Party, and the most agrarian socialist side. I was so proud of it, But I really have empathy with people who make their living on a farm. I think they're so important. So and my side of politics quite often has always been sort of the bane of farmers or whatever. That needn't be the case, because I actually think farmers are bloody brilliant. I wanted to be one.
Sheep argument, Dave. Oh, down here, boy, oh boy.
Exactly. And I've got sympathy for that.
Yeah.
And see, I don't think we should always, because I think one of the challenges for Australia more broadly is, when we've got 80% of our population that hugs, within 20 or 30 k's of the coastline, we do have to be very mindful of those that live and choose to live and make their living in the interior. Yeah. Because invariably they're making the food, they're creating the export dollars that make our economy run and all that sort of stuff. And I'm not I'm a bit of a fierce advocate for country people, because I'm from there. But at the same time, I don't think that the other side of politics should always use the old, you hate farmers, or because I don't. I wanted to be one. I wish if my mother had been a bloke, well, I don't know how that would have worked, but anyway, if my mother, I would have inherited my grandfather's farm, and I wouldn't have gone into politics, and I'd still be going around with my combine and having a great time.
See, my wife, David, I think you would know Louise Rowe, over many years have spoken. Now, of course, they were instrumental in getting live sheep exports banned. You would not believe, well, maybe you would, because you've probably been subject to it, the disgraceful and disgusting, abusive comments from people in authority of farmers, people at the head of farming, have just attacked them all, thinking, and their attitude is totally sympathetic to the farmers. It's not cut and dried. It's not like, we don't give a stuff about you, we're just going to ban it, and we don't give a shit what happens to you afterwards. Yeah. Just what they've offered the farmers, I think, and what I've seen and what she's talked about, is a very workable alternative to not just end it, but to do it in a way that everyone wins. But the abuse that she has copped, my goodness, it's just disgusting, absolutely disgusting, to the point where they've had, a lot of the people have threatened of being charged, and have come back and apologised publicly for the abuse, just because the RSPCA are looking after the welfare. That's all they're doing in a nutshell, the welfare of the animals, and they're doing it with the farmers in mind to do it as fairly as possible, but doesn't work for them.
No, and look at it. I think farming now is, people. We've got to realise farmers are some of the most adaptive people that there are, and that's to their credit. So, look, I think I love this new term now that we've got to bring. I love that term. We've got to bring the temperature down a bit. I quite like that.
Got to make sure we're all on the same page, Dave.
Yeah. I quite like that, because some people go absolutely off their trolley about a whole range of things, and I just think, hey, wait a second, do we have to be so abusive or I don't know. But you see, as I say, I enjoy the ribbing. I've always tried to bring a bit of humour to the Parliament side of things and the debates, because I actually think that's important.
You do it well.
But I think the other thing is the other thing I think is, which is really important, is and I'm watching very closely the whole debate around council culture, for example, because it is a fine line, but it is also, I think, we should just accept that there are things that we wouldn't do now, but we did do. But I mean, how many times when and they would have done it. The Democrats do this in America, and the Republicans do it. They go and find the old photos of a young, whether it's Trudeau. I think Trudeau dressed up as, I can't remember what he dressed up as, but when he was 22. Goodness gracious! Thank God there was no mobile phones. If there were mobile phones before we did it, well, Hall said hippies. Honestly, I would have been counselled years ago. But that's what we did. I mean, whether it's like people, of course, people don't do blackface anymore.
Yeah.
But I can remember as a kid watching on the ABC the black and white minstrel show.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Is that acceptable now? Absolutely not. Did it happen then? Yes, it did. And we learned from that. But let's not get.
There was a story, Peter, you'd probably remember this one. There was a story not so long ago about a child that went to school for book day. They had to go dressed as their favourite hero or whatever else. Yep. And this kid decided to go as Nick Natanui. And so blacked up. Yeah. And he got in trouble. The parents got in trouble. And it was a media shitstorm. And look, I'm going to take a position on this. My position is, I think that kid was absolutely doing the right thing. The bottom line is, that's his hero. And what he looked like was he had dark skin. The kid was emulating that. That was a sign of respect, not a sign of disrespect. I couldn't agree to this day.
I couldn't agree more. Imagine how stupid it would have been if he decided not to paint his face black or whatever, go as Nick Natanui as a white man,
context,
as opposed to I mean, no child. The innocence of a child is viewed through the eyes of prejudiced adults, and have said, no, the only outcome of this is that you are belittling a black man. You can't do that. I mean, wow, the innocence of the child is sitting there going, hang on, what am I doing wrong?
Dave, put us straight.
I mean, I don't get it. I think that's just I was outraged by that. It's very different from doing it as an adult in a seemingly mocking way, but he was not mocking in any way, shape, or form. He's just been a kid trying to be like his hero. Don't get it. Rich, steer us in a different way, brother.
What's that? Steer us in a different. I'm going to bring up Fenton's thing, because I think this relates to a whole bunch of stuff. Fenton says, I worked for a Syrian Muslim for years. He has a great sense of humor. He allowed me to ask any questions, and it was so much better than internet research. You were talking about humor in politics, humor in beliefs, in this sort of cross-cultural beliefs. How important do we reckon humor is in just sort of greasing the wheels of a society that's not attacking each other all the time?
Well, Rich, I reckon it's more important than ever. And quite often, comedy or, an enhanced and supported sense of humour has brought out some of the best of Australia. I'll give you an example. I had a great last year. We had the 40th anniversary of the Australia 2 win. 41 years ago now. That yacht crossed the line and changed the nation's psyche at that point of time about what we were capable of.
Yeah.
And yet, when I talk, and I was so fortunate because last year I had a great opportunity to meet and chat to John Bertram for a number of occasions in the lead up to some events we had here in WA. Because I really wanted, as cultural minister, I wanted to really celebrate that because it was a point in time, and they're rare points in time in our history where the nation sort of does reflect on itself together. And it's not always a sporting event. It can be a tragedy. I think recent. I can always remember Ash Wednesday in 1983, and I've spoken before about you had Bob Mormill on, and I always remember Bob was on the radio that day, and I was listening to him, and he was sort of describing the utter pain and trauma of the families and the communities, and they were in another state. But he brought it really home. And of course, what happened is, I think everyone realised the vulnerability of us to bushfire, the fact that bushfire has been part of Australian psyche for thousands of years, literally. And but those moments now with Bertram, humour still was a key part of how that team not only came together but were kept together. And I think there's classic stories of this going back to World War One and our conflicts when our diggers have been away. The humour has been an important part of what Australians love. So when it's challenged in terms of what you can't say or what you can say, or you can't say that anymore, or you better not do that, you better not look that way or make that comment. I still think we need to challenge that and debate that because I wouldn't like to see our sense of humour and the importance of it diminish, because I reckon that'd be a diminished Australia. And I honestly believe that.
The line, with humour.
Sorry?
It's where we draw the line with humour because, it's migrated. You were saying you like the British comedies, and yet the Benny Hills of the 70s would not stand the test today.
Mate, they would not fly. They would not fly today.
No.
And you see the interesting thing. Sorry?
Even Monty Python, really. A lot of that was on the edge, even then. But today, I think it would be unacceptable.
Yeah.
And so, therefore, that's why the debate is important.
Yeah.
That's why, I went to, I can't remember his name now, and I only went because my brother-in-law said, can we go to, he was on in Perth recently, and he's sort of been a bit out there because he sort of, his humour it's quite, a lot of swearing. And I sort of, it was a bit testing for me because I would normally go, no, I don't know. But I must admit, I'm going, okay, I'm going to go along and just give this guy a go. And I've got to say, it was interesting to look at the audience. The audience were very, very male, very much your 35, well, probably 30 to maybe 50 male, very Anglo, very Anglo in their constitution. But I think these are the sorts of stuff we should talk about and we should be exploring, because even in sport now, it's very interesting. AFL or the uptake of the female take up of games like AFL and soccer is massive now, and we've had to quite rightfully challenge the sort of old culture of the old football club culture. And that conversation's been an important one to have. The old locker room sort of, we'll say that out the front there, but we'll say, we're really going to have a bit of a good old, chortle in the locker room that's been challenged, and I think rightfully so. But I think it doesn't hurt to just say, okay, well, where is the balance? Where do we land in this? Because I wouldn't like to see humour curtailed either.
No, not at all. No.
David, we have to. The other guys don't know, but of course you have to disappear at 9:30. Is that correct?
Oh.
Yes.
Okay.
I've got to go and pick up my son, who is in the Air Force Cadets.
Oh,
Right. What, 80 can't fly home? That's
No, he's a bit too young. He wants to fly.
okay. So
That'd be
I
brilliant.
just want to ensure that we cover a couple of things. The podcast, of course, that we are doing does kind of lean toward personal belief and stuff like this. So I wanted to ask you a question. What do you believe happens to us when we die?
I think I have not, for example, in terms of the body, I think the body just becomes like any other carcass, quite frankly. I've seen plenty of them on the farm, and I think the human body becomes exactly the same. There's no difference. I don't think there's any white light or filing into a line, walking towards a white light. However, so in that terms of the bodily sense, I think we just become part of the earth again, and I'm very happy to be cremated, and that's it. And so now, in terms of, do I pray, for example, there are many occasions I pray. I don't pray necessarily in what people would see in the traditional sense. Because what I do sometimes is sort of just close my eyes and ask for some guidance or some help. And invariably that's worked reasonably well for me, quite frankly. But I don't go to church. But I don't go to church to pray or to pray to a divine spirit, if you like. But I do have a great affinity with the Aboriginal approach, if you like, to the world, which is very much about that there is a link to stories, to a journey, and that I'm part of that. I like that about the Aboriginal way of looking at things, and I have I'm intrigued by whenever I listen or talk to an Aboriginal elder or somebody who talks about that reaching back. I have an affinity with that. I get that, and because I think it comes from just being a person who is intrigued by the story, and of course it's the approach that I have to life. The former Cat Stevens used to have a beautiful line in a song, "Oh very young," the song where it starts off with "Oh very young," and one of them is, "You're only dancing on this earth for a short time," and it's a bit of a saying I have to lots of people. I say, we are only dancing on this earth for a short time. Make it magical, make it beautiful, and make it special. And if that touches someone else's life, that's great. If it enhances your own personal life, that's brilliant. And if it brings joy to some people, then that's fantastic. But it's I just for goodness sake, I don't know age thing. I don't know, Rowie. Maybe age does it to you. Maybe as you get to, I'm approaching 60 next year, and my approach to life now is, well, have I got 20 good years left? Have I got 10? So what I've got to make sure I do is that they are celebrated as best I can. And for me at the moment, it's about finding that balance, because, this job is an interesting one. It's, lots of nights away. And I'm at the moment probably going through that. Okay, where's the balance got to lie? Because it's probably a little bit overbalanced in one way than it should be. And I've got to recalibrate that.
It's a question I I ask myself and talk to myself often, David, I'm on the wrong side of getting close to 70. So I'm a little bit farther down the track than you. And I constantly, the older I get, it actually spun me out one day. I was sitting in the Ironbark Brewery in Caversham. I used to do the Sunday session out there playing acoustic classics, and that was there for 7 years. And I was going along just fine, thank you very much. I just turned 54, 55. And one of my mates said, Rowie, that beer you've got in front of you? And I went, yeah. And it's just about a quarter of the glass left. And he said, that represents your life right now. And it was a bit of a joke. We laughed, and, that's all I've got left is 3/4 of the glass is gone. There's a little bit in the bottom. And I kind of laughed about it. And that absolutely shattered me and still plays on my mind today that he thought it was funny to say that that's all you've got left in your life. And then it became such a reality to me. So I'm 67. I'm 68 in January, only a couple of years away, not looking forward to hitting 70 at all. And it plays on my mind all the time. So I'm making sure now that I'm doing things that are worth doing. As of Saturday, I'm going down to Mandurah on Saturday. There's an Amana Living aged care facility down there. Channel 9 are going to be there. I'm going to be there singing and playing because there are 5 people, all women, who are over the age of 100. There's 606 years between them all. And so there's cocktails and canopies for these. And I'm going to have fun. I'm going to joke. I'm going to be silly. I'm going to play songs that they love, all of the songs, da, 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 good times, never, all that kind of stuff, and have a ball. Now, I wouldn't have thought of doing that 6 months ago, but now that I've retired, stuff like that, I'm just hanging. The fun, it's going to be so good. And that's a part of my life now. So I'm reflecting on what you said, David. I get that. The older you get, if you don't start changing and thinking about the things that you're not going to be able to do one day, you're missing out on an absolute goldmine of joy and fun.
Excellent.
David, sorry, just a very quick question, because I know you've got to go, so I want to try and squeeze it in.
Plenty of time. Plenty of time.
How do you...
The kid can wait.
As long as I leave about 9:30, they finish at 10, so I got time.
Go on, Jake. Sorry.
You're so I guess you've said that you're basically a Christian because you have a belief, but you're not a. Yeah. I guess you're a lapsed Christian in some ways because you're not going to church.
You're right.
But obviously you've got a belief in the scripture and the commandments and all of that kind of stuff. And I assume that as a result, you live your life to the values that Christ promulgated. Do you see that Christian set of beliefs and values works in the political sphere? Like, do you ever find yourself in a situation where you feel like it's a compromise of those values, or that you see people that are contradicting those values so aggressively that you actually want to say or do something about it?
Yeah, great question.
Well, I get angry when some who profess to be Christian are very unchristian-like.
Yeah.
And in fact, because what I love about the Christian ethos is I find it very hypocritical when people of Christian faith use hatred, use difference, can't accept diversity, and then also then put that into the political realm. Yeah. When the very person that they believe in, Christ, was all not those things. My understanding of Christ was he was the most loving of all people. He was the most accepting of all people, including gay people or people who had various afflictions, the disabled, the people who found themselves downtrodden, poor, whatever it was. Jesus's approach, from my understanding, was that acceptance of all and love for all. And so I actually get more angry when I see a Christian, and if they're a politician who espouses to be a Christian and they then do the opposite to that, I get angry. And I'm not very happy. So
Okay, so now we
so in
want
that
names.
I don't
That's right.
so you
I was
see,
gonna
I
say,
don't have
Dave, virtual high five. That's
Yeah.
really good. Thank you, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's why I was supportive of marriage equality. It's why I was supportive of voluntary assisted dying. It was why I was supportive of when I first got into Parliament early in the 2000s. We legalised, we decriminalised some people who were homosexual and who under the current laws, until they were changed, could be charged simply because of their sexually orientation. And for me, when people get angry, and I remember those debates; they were very interesting. We had one Christian group, quite an interesting group during the first gay and lesbian debate in the early 2000s. I think it was about 2003-4. They would come and sit in the public gallery, very stern-looking people, I might say, and they wouldn't say anything. They were very polite. They didn't sort of threaten you or angry, but they just sat there with these very grim and interesting focuses, and it was quite intimidating in some ways, because you look up and they'd be staring down at you while you might have been making a contribution. But look, so that's where I sit. I just think I just share this very quick. I had this fellow who wrote this email and called me a hypocrite because I had done something that he believed was not against the Christian faith. I was a hypocrite, and he used language that I found quite nasty. And then I drafted an email. Now, it's a good thing. You should always write an email and not press go.
Sleep on it.
And I didn't send it. But what I basically said in response was, thank you for your email. Very polite. Thank you for your email. My understanding, and I said basically what I just said to you. My understanding of Jesus was that he had compassion. He demonstrated acceptance and tolerance and love. All the things that you have not expressed in your email. I wonder who. So I wonder, and I finished the line with, "So I wonder who really is the hypocrite here." Now, I didn't send it.
Oh.
And I it's probably one of those ones I'll regret not sending, but I didn't send it.
No, there's still time to track it down, find it.
That's right.
Oh, it's still in that draft list. Look, I must admit, this sounds terrible. This sounds terrible, but I do actually have a list, Rowie, called, I won't use the term, but it's basically a list of people that I will have great pleasure post politics in telling them what I really think of them.
I keep detailed files.
That list is not long. It's not a long list, but I will politely let them know what I really think.
That's a contradiction in terms, isn't it? How can you politely unload?
It sounds like a perfect David Templeman part two.
I know I've asked a lot of questions, Rowie. May I ask one more, and then I promise I'll shut up.
As long as Rich doesn't miss out on anything, he's been.
No, this is good.
Okay.
So, Dave, I have multiple sclerosis, and I have had it for a very long time. And thankfully, medical cannabis was legalized 6 or 7 years ago, and it is the single most effective medication I've ever used in my life. In fact, it allowed me to stop 6 or 7 other daily medications. I'm on 2 medications now as a result, just the medical cannabis, which, by the way, is full extract cannabis. There is nothing different to real cannabis. It is real cannabis, and it's extremely effective. 2 questions from that. Number 1, I am prevented from driving in any way, shape, or form as a result of being on that cannabis, which is a legal medication prescribed. So it's not an illicit drug. Number 2, being that it is so effective, especially when compared to the likes of the recreational use of alcohol and the unprescribed and unmeasured usage of things like opiates. I wonder when it is that the Labor government is going to consider the adult use of cannabis openly. Is it something that is on the cards, and is it something that there is a policy decision behind, or is it political manoeuvring that we haven't done it yet?
Well, you may remember we did dabble with it early in the 2000s.
Yes.
I think you'll remember from memory, there was I think it was the 2-plant policy.
Yes.
Mhm.
You could have,
was the Barnett government that took it away.
As an individual, have a two-plant policy. I think the opposition then, of course, played the old, soft on drugs, soft on crime, and I suppose at the end of the day we folded. We folded.
You're now dominant. You've got complete control of the parliament.
Well, only until next March. Only until next March. Things could change. I actually was in America. I was in America earlier this year. Took my family. We had a great time. And what I did notice over there, of course, I think it was California in particular, they've legalized, and they have shops. They have they have the shops, and you go and you get your you're allowed to get a certain amount, I think it was, and it's just like a normal transaction through a retail outlet. You see, again, I'm quite open to these. My mum actually had for a long time had regressive back problems and did try the medicinal cannabis, but I don't think that's the same as it's different to the growing hemp. But I suppose, look, I've always been I as long as it doesn't hurt somebody, someone else. I'm not, I'm not vehemently opposed to those sorts of things.
That all comes back to your values, though, doesn't it, Dave? I mean, this is what I like about you, is that your values, you're consistent.
But you see, I think there's an interesting debate taking place now, Jazz, about alcohol more broadly. There's a big debate going on about gambling and whether you should have gambling revenue in sport and on television, all that sort of stuff. It's a very interesting debate to watch, because the other thing that I find about alcohol is young people. I mean, I had a go at one of my staffers who's 20, and I said, the reason why all of our live performance venues are folding is because you young people, stand like John Bielke Peterson. You people I know about you. You're not drinking. You don't go to a pub now and drink. Most of the not most, but a lot of young people I know now go to the gym. They love the gym, and they watch what they eat and they drink, and they're not drink. So of course the poor old person who wants to hire Rowie to play his tunes on a Sunday session, we're finding a lot of our live venues are really challenged now because the nature of the patron has changed. They still want to go and see live music, but they're not consuming alcohol, which is one of the ways that you keep the bloody till going and paying your staff.
Maybe they should be consuming cannabis. What do you reckon, Rowie? Would you prefer them to be stoned or drunk?
Both, preferably. I think that makes it big.
Well, I'd say, Rowie, if you're going on Sunday, there'd be a few people who'd be well medicated that you'll be going.
Oh, yeah.
I've got to tell you, I'd love the idea about 5 people being over 100 and they're going to be serving cocktails and canapes. I think that could get very, very messy very quickly.
Now, you see, they should bring back. Now, I hope that they use heritage cocktails, like the old blackberry nip, and bring back the Purfrey Pearl or whatever it's called, and the Spumanti. All of those classics of the 70s. All of those wonderful ladies who are in there.
The Wild Peach Cooler.
All would have had a tipple of the old blackberry nip. What a wonderful
West Coast Cooler. That's 80s.
You're showing your age now, David, which is not a problem at all, my friend.
Stone's green ginger wine, a marvellous.
Oh,
if
of
you're a
Australia.
singer, if you're a singer and you're not gargling Stone's Green Ginger Wine, you're not looking after your vocal cords properly. It's a beautiful thing. That absolutely fantastic, mate. Just before we wrap up, because we do have a couple of things I want to do with you. Well, three things if we've got time. One is I want you to belt out a couple of bars of something that you've sung in Parliament House, which is hilarious. I can't remember the song I heard. Secondly, we just want to do a quick comp with you just to get some details. It's funny, but I just wanted to know before we wrap it up, what message are you teaching your children as you get older and they come through? Is it one of belief in God? Is that do you talk to them about religion, belief in God, all that kind of stuff, or do you let it just be their discovery?
So, okay, the irony is my 4 children, they're all teenagers. The youngest is 13, twins are 14, and the oldest is 16. They go to
Boys
a
or
Catholic
girls?
school. One of the girl is only one girl. She's one of the twins.
Yep.
They all go to a Catholic school here in Mandurah.
Right.
My eldest son, 16, is a devout atheist.
Yep.
And he's reading some remarkable philosophical books and has this great view of the world, which I just love how he sees the world. And that's why I love how young people see the world more broadly.
Wow. Yeah.
The girl is probably I don't think she'll be a nun, but she's certainly she actually quite enjoys the spiritual aspects, because they all have to do religious instruction, of course, or religious.
Yes, yes.
You know, she actually really revels in it. She loves it, and she can give you the 12 apostles and their brothers and their sisters and everything. She's quite good. The youngest one is still searching. He's sort of just finding his way because he's still very young. And the other twin, Mia's brother, he is very much the modern young man of the day. Instant gratification is an important aspect of life at his age.
Yep.
So, but my approach is very much they know where I sit, but their journey is their journey.
Yep.
And I'm very open for the conversations with them. I love probing them with questions about their own thoughts. I love talking to young people more broadly, just about what do you think of this and what do you reckon about that?
Absolutely.
And I actually like that feedback from young people, because they surprise you every single day with their maturity and their capacity to take on concepts and
underestimate them, don't we?
And mate, they are so. I always remember about when we were having. I was waiting for the result of the plebiscite on marriage equality, and I remember saying to my 16-year-old son, he was then 14, and I said, what's your view? He said, why is everyone so?
Right.
His response was, why is everyone so head up about this? Young people had moved on years ago.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's what I love. The beauty of young people is
hang-ups that we've got.
Oh, mate.
Totally. The older generation have got a lot to answer for. So, Fenton just said these drink names are so hilarious. The Porphyry Pearl and the what was it? What's the
Harvey Wallbanger.
Well, the Harvey Wall, but the Blackberry Nip.
Blackberry
Nip was a great mixer. It was it was a berry-based mixer, but people used to mix it with lemonade, and honestly, it was. But then there was the Spumante, which was a very cheap
Riccadonna.
It was awesome.
Do they have a shandy in the US? Do they do that?
Oh, I don't know.
No, I think it's uniquely Australian.
See, I think they should. I think they should bring back the pony.
Oh yeah.
The pony was a classic opportunity to extend your time.
Yes.
Mate,
we know you've got to wrap up in a sec, Dave. So we just want to finish up with quick fire questions. Are you up to it? It's about 30 seconds.
Yep. How many are there?
Oh, I'm not telling you.
Oh, okay, that's all right. Yeah.
No, there's not a lot, but they're just quick fire questions. It just gets us a chance to find out a little bit more about you. So, righto, off the top, Earth, is it round or flat?
It's round.
Okay. Moon landing, fake or real?
It's real.
Jesus, made up story or real?
Real.
Donald Trump or Kamala Harris?
Kamala Harris.
These are all fairly predictable. I think ghosts, real or not real?
Real.
Oh, okay. Preference,
That's
sweet or savory?
Interesting.
Sorry,
Sweet or
preference?
savory?
A savoury.
Savory, coffee or tea?
Tea. And it's got to be leaf tea, no tea bags. Tea bags are crap.
Oh,
It's got to be
we've
leaf
got our,
tea.
absolutely.
Oh,
I agree
controversy.
wholeheartedly, mate. We have our little teapot in the kitchen. Rock music or classical?
I love both.
I was gonna
I
say
have a very eclectic.
Classical
But
rock.
if I was, I would probably go for a rock.
Yeah. Okay.
I-
Favorite band or artist?
Favorite artist is a fella called Harry Chapin, the greatest
Yeah.
storyteller.
Cats in the Cradle.
Greatest storyteller that there
Taxi
ever
is
was.
one of the greatest songs. It's
Taxi,
just
loved it. But his stories
yes.
and his capacity to do things was
Yep.
just wonderful.
We lost him way too early. What word do you
Yeah.
find hard to pronounce?
What word?
What word?
Phenomenon. Phenomenon.
Phenomenal.
I can't say that word.
No one can.
Poetic justice right
Yeah,
there.
I can't
That
say
is
phenomenon.
phenomenon. Yeah. That's
Yeah,
gorgeous.
that's a bugger of a word.
Do you speak another language?
A little bit of Noongar.
Oh, really?
Little bit.
What season?
yeah.
What season are we in at the moment? Do you know that one?
No, I don't. But it's a new one.
I think it's
It starts with K. It starts with K.
okay.
That's
That'll
the
do.
Noongar one.
That'll do.
Kaya Butchermanang.
And if you had to change your first name, David, what would you change it to? What would you like to be called?
Okay, so I gave I loved my grandfather. His name was
Right.
Jack.
Jack.
And I loved him so much. And we named my first son Jack. So I would
Beautiful.
steal the name off him.
Jack Templeman.
Templeman.
What a-
Family name, Jack Templeman. Sounds like a movie hero.
Yeah,
what a-
that's
yeah.
a great name.
Or in my
might-
case, a fading matinee idol.
Yeah.
And I didn't have this on my list, but I just thought of it. Who's your AFL team? Do you have one?
Dockers.
Yeah, we should have. I wish I had known that before we invited you on.
Yeah.
Originally was before the Dockers came on. I was a Saints man.
Okay. In 1997, when I joined Coast FM and 6MM back in the day, was when Peel Thunder launched.
Yep.
And I wrote their first club song and performed it on their very first game between Peel Thunder and South Fremantle on Rushton Park. Got out in the middle, absolutely shitting myself beyond belief, and sang a song that I'd written for Peel Thunder. Just a bit of trivia there. I thought I might throw in at the end.
Good
there.
on you,
So,
man. It's good.
It was fabulous. Now, do you belt out a couple of quick bars of something you've sung in Parliament House?
Look, I'll do the song I love. Just on the song, I'm very famous in India. No, it was amazing.
Really?
How the song happened. So, Rich and Jazz, basically what happens when you're the leader of the house, one of the roles you have at the end of the year, the last day, to close, I call it to close the shop, is as leader of the house, you thank everyone. You basically thank all the staff and, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, they said to me end of the first year I was leader of the house, they said, oh, you've got to do this speech. And I said, oh, well, what do I, because I don't like speeches, I don't use written speeches. And I said, well, they wrote one and it was lots of names, which was great because they're all the people who cook for you and, the valet, not the valet, the gardeners, everyone, wonderful people. So I went through, it was a bit boring. So in the end, I thought, oh, look, it just was a spur of the moment thing. I said, well, look, now before I finish the year, I think we'll have a little song.
Yeah.
So I'll do this one. It's not necessarily funny as such, but it was the first one I did. And it is a Monty Python one. And it's the Universe
Always look
song.
on the bright
I love
side of
Yes.
life.
Universe.
I love the song because it actually
Yes.
sums up how I think we
Yeah.
are in the world. I think it's a
Beautiful.
brilliantly written song. So,
30,000 light years from galactic central point.
so remember when you're standing on a planet that's evolving and
Revolving.
revolving at 900 miles an hour. It's orbiting at 19 miles a second, so it's reckoned. The sun that is the source of all our power. There's the sun and you and me and all the stars that you can see. We're moving at 1,000,000 miles a day. In an outer spiral arm at 40,000 miles an hour is a galaxy we call the Milky Way. And the galaxy itself contains 100 billion stars. It's 100,000 light years side to side. And it bulges in the middle, 16,000 light years thick. Out by us, it's just 3,000 light years wide. We're 30,000 light years from galactic central point. We go round every 200 million years. And our galaxy is only one of millions and billions in this amazing and expanding universe. Well, the
Very
universe,
good.
you know, keeps on expanding and expanding in all of the directions it can whiz. As fast as it can go, the speed
The
of
speed
light,
of
you
light,
know,
you know.
12 million miles a minute, and that's the fastest speed there is. So remember, when you're feeling very small and insecure, how amazingly unlikely is your birth, and pray to some intelligent life out there in space, because there's bugger all down here on Earth.
Can we have your liver then?
Brilliant.
It's been great joining you, folks.
Very, very
Fantastic,
good.
mate.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you. Rich, quick parting words before David disappears, Rich.
Look, I am going to bring up a comment by Fenton again, and it echoes what diversity of his kids, big evidence of a great and wise father. Thanks for joining the boys on the show. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah,
And
brilliant, Fenton. Thank you.
I think we've got a new theme song for the show.
And all I
Jay-
can think of now is every time Dave says he's leader of the house, in my head I'm going, leader of the house. Rum, rum.
David,
Leader
thank
of
you
the
so
house,
much.
But now he's gone. The leader of the house, but now he's gone.
I did think you were going to sing "Always Look on the Bright Side of Life," but I love your
Yes.
choice. It's one of my favourite songs.
It is a
Mate,
great
thank you
song.
so much for accepting the
On your
invitation to come on and share with us who you are, why you are, where you are, the whole bit. It was absolutely fantastic. Thank your son for hanging in there and accepting you, even though you're a little bit late. But, mate, thanks again. Take care, look after yourself, and we'll do this again another time, maybe.
Good on you. See you, folks.
Absolute pleasure,
Thanks,
Dave.
guys.
Thank
Cheers,
you.
mate.
Yeah, mate.
Bye-bye. Switch yourself off. You know, that's it.
He's
Wow.
great.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's just he's the most politician I've ever met in my life, and yeah, fantastic. Bravo, says Fenton. Fantastic, guys. Talk among yourself. I'm going to disappear for a sec, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
No worries.
Okay, hang on.
You know, Rich, I said I had an involvement with the Labor Party. In the 1993 federal election, I was the Labor candidate for Tangney,
Oh,
and I came second.
wow.
I just missed
Wow.
out to a guy called Darrell Andrews, who eventually became our federal attorney general.
Oh, incredible. Yeah.
Going
Nice.
back away, 93. Shows
Yeah.
my age.
Yeah, it does actually. Yeah.
Ugh, too old.
There's a lot
Actually,
of, whole
my,
lot of Labour
my-
losing that year.
My entrance into politics. Do you know the name Carmen Lawrence?
Yes.
So she was a WA state premier. I was a
Mhm.
research officer for her. That
Oh,
was
really?
kind of one of my first ever jobs.
Brilliant.
That was what an experience. Wow. It's a baptism of fire coming into the political world as a staff member rather than a politician,
yeah.
and seeing all the machinations of how things were
Mhm.
behind the scenes.
I bet.
Absolutely fascinating.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Is
Look-
politics something that you've ever considered?
No. The closest I ever came to politics was one of my very good friends from high school. Very young. I mean, it was only a few years out of high school. He got on the ballot for the Liberal Party,
Oh,
and
okay.
I happened to be counting ballots that year, and we
Right.
ended up with the one from where he was running, and it was
Right.
fascinating. So because we
Yeah.
only obviously counted the ones with the preferential numbering all the way through, and there was an enormous amount of votes that went. Number one, this guy, I won't put his name down, but this guy, Liberal Party. Number two, Labour, number 3 Greens, and all the way down to the alternate Liberals. Even Greens, Labour, all the other parties, if you knew this guy, you put him number 1, even though you voted opposite end of the political spectrum. I thought that was fascinating. I've never really seen that.
So you said he was Liberal, not an independent, though?
Yeah, he was Liberal, and
Wow.
he was second on the ballot for the Liberals, so he didn't get in. But I was fascinated at how many Labour and Greens voted who knew him, put him first.
What was his name?
Fascinating sort of way of the politics working. I've never seen that before, but yeah, it was amazing.
The last state election was really interesting. Like Rowie, talking about religious people, I was quite involved with the last state election, and
Right.
I was astounded at the Christian parties that put themselves up, knowing full well that they were going to get bugger all votes. And it was purely done, I think, as a way of actually cropping preferences and having that flow-on effect so that you can get the most conservative candidate possible to be elected. Quite a good strategy. But going into it knowing you're spending all this money and making all this effort with absolutely no chance, it's a great, it shows great faith.
Well, it's amazing the amount of individuals who found a way to actually capitalize on some of the loopholes, if you like, in individuals putting up their name, and achieving stuff that they perhaps hadn't anticipated, not really trying to get in and have a seat, as it were, but to be able to actually influence other people within the political system locally. It's quite incredible, some of the achievements.
I wonder if that's another podcast for us to talk about how religious people going into politics, how that sort of manifests and how, the values and so on, how they feel comfortable inflicting religious dogma onto a secular population.
Yeah. I think that'd be good because our democracy is a representative democracy. We're not voting them in to vote their values. We're voting them in to vote our values as a community. So it's very. I see a very deep conflict, even more so than many other democracies around for that kind of behavior.
And Ali is the next person I want to have on. She's an amazing Egyptian woman who, of course, is local, and
that'd be brilliant.
Yeah, Suresh recommended her. Fascinating story, fascinating background for a woman to get where she is from being born in Egypt as a young person to be able to achieve what she has achieved in a relatively short period of time, as it were. Really looking forward to it. They've kind of ticked the box and said, okay, it's very difficult to get an active politician involved. David's one of the few that I knew would agree, because he's not interested in the political pretense of I must be this and I must be that. He doesn't care. He's just been a real guy. So many politicians aren't. In fact, I don't know if you saw, there's a new series that started on ABC last night. It's just beautiful. I don't know who came up with the idea. We all know the journalist Lee Sales.
Yeah.
Is it Lee?
Yes, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
With all of these autistic journalist wannabe people who have invited these people in to interview them. And the first one was Sam. Hey, no, the New Zealand actor.
Oh, Sam Neill.
Sam Neill. It was just, and they're allowed to ask whatever question they wanted. It was just beautiful. So they had Sam, and then they had Hamish Blake, and then they had our Prime Minister. And it was interesting listening to David talking. And Albanese is a kind of had a very normal background, single mum, no money, blah, blah, blah. But he found it impossible to break out of that I'm the Prime Minister of Australia kind of, whereas David doesn't care. He's not about the image per se. He's just about being real. And Albo just could not.
Roy, do we want
what?
That? I mean, is he supposed to be, as a Prime Minister, should he be more statesman-like? I mean, you look at the likes of Trump, who's totally broke that mold of what the US president should represent. Do we want that from Albanese?
Well, see, I think Obama represented the way to do that, where he had a sense of humor, he was fun, he was real, but he was also very much statesman, as you would imagine.
But he still had gravitas,
Yes, but so many of them can't. And Albanese just, I mean, look, he probably doesn't have a brilliant personality at the best of times, but trying to break out of that and maintain that genuineness. And it was very much, I saw all of these people hanging to talk to our Prime Minister, and I saw him kind of elevating himself up on a throne.
Yeah.
And you can talk to me, but I am the Prime Minister, and he wouldn't have done it intentionally. That's just the way I saw him being. And I heard you mention when I was just out of the room, Carmen Lawrence, who I thought was I thought she was a lovely lady. I thought she was a great politician. I found her as being quite real, and it was a disappointment when she moved out of politics. It was a long time ago. But yeah, you were working with her, I heard you say. I thought she was. Look, it's an art. There's not too many politicians who manage to be real, have a sense of humor, have a bit of fun. I mean, Dutton, I think, would be the ultimate exponent of someone who just is the most boring. You know, if you're at a party with him, you'd find the nearest doorway to get the hell out of there, because, you know, he exemplifies everything that is dull and boring in politicians.
There's a lot of politicians who I would rather them not be there. But I got to tell you, when I was working at 6PR, I actually happened to meet Julia Gillard as Prime Minister. But 2 years previously, I had met her when she came to Perth in her role as a minister. And I think at the time she was small business. Anyway, met her. So I've met her twice in 2 separate roles. And both times, I've got to tell you, she was the nicest, most genuine person on a one-to-one basis that I've ever come across in a politician. But when I saw her perform in the media, completely different. Shields up.
Yeah.
Hard to deal with.
Yeah.
But they've got to, because they'll get torn to pieces by the media otherwise. Look at what Sky News After Dark does.
Oh,
that's a hit squad.
Don't watch that. Whatever you do. God, jeez. Seriously. I mean, I interviewed Michaela Cash in Mandurah, and she was the most. She came across beautiful and warm, and the handshake and the hug and all of that. I thought, oh wow! And as soon as the microphone opened, bang, it's business, Cash. Thank you very much. And there was just no niceties about her whatsoever. It's but anyway. So look, we've got probably a few more minutes if anyone wants to jump on and have a comment. Unfortunately, it's been the Fenton Mully. Well, not unfortunately.
It's the Fenton show.
Thankfully, it's been the Fenton Mully show. I mean, he's just been there all night, which is amazing, mate. Thank you so much for being a part of the podcast.
To go to work, Fenton?
Yeah.
Sorry? Yeah,
he goes to work when the show finishes. He's got an arrangement with his boss.
That's right.
Mate, the tiles are building up.
Hey,
remember,
that's true. That's true.
There's a comment
from
Fenton. He's not the Messiah. He's a very naughty boy. This got me in big trouble at Baptist Seminary.
Oh,
you want to hear the story?
Yes, please.
So I'm in the Baptist Bible College training to be a Baptist minister with the other boys and men, and I got in big trouble one time because I didn't realize the principal of the school was standing behind me. Yet that probably wouldn't have stopped me saying it anyway, but I didn't realize it. And so I was like, I was thinking, you know, we were learning some stuff. It was getting a bit intense. It was getting a bit more dogmatic rather than well argued. And I went, oh, you know what? I said, guys, I reckon what we should do in schools like this is make every prospective minister sit down and watch Monty Python's Life of Brian. And if they don't laugh at it, kick them out, because they're obviously not cut out to be a pastor, because they're taking the whole thing too seriously. And I turn around, he's looking at me. I'm like,
oh no.
Damn.
He's standing behind me, isn't he?
Yeah, exactly.
When the film came out, I mean, they're almost calling for crucifixions of all of the guys, the Python gang that made the film.
But it wasn't about Jesus. It's clearly called The Life of Brian.
Yeah,
it's
if anything, it was poking fun at everything we make of it, and he's exactly right.
Yeah.
The critique.
I think if anybody should be pissed off, it's anybody called Brian.
Yeah, that's right. the first Karen. Yeah, poor guy. But
Oh.
this is what we're talking about. You know, there is a level of comedy that it plays into racism and all the awful sides of our society, sort of beefs that up. And I think, yeah, let's have a discussion about that side of things. But comedy that is a commentary against things that really need a commentary against.
Yeah.
Sometimes we can't hear it in a debate, but we can hear it in a Monty Python sketch. And I think we need more of that kind of commentary and allowing that as a very vital voice in everything, politics, religion, society. It's something we need. And if we lose that, we're going to lose something very important.
Interestingly, I go on. Sorry, go on, Rich. Jace.
I was just saying that there's a few comedians who are sort of quite well known whose humor is racist and bigoted and just frankly hateful. They have some level of popularity. They do get Netflix specials and so on, but the humor is actually, as far as I'm concerned, wrong. Then I look at someone like a Ricky Gervais. Now, that guy, his humor is also racist and bigoted, but really, when you look closely at it, it is very, very clever and a really strong commentary and criticism of a lot of it. He's basically taking it, turning it on its head and saying, I'm going to say something really racist and bigoted to make you conscious and aware of the fact that this kind of commentary exists. Mm-hmm. And if anything, what it's doing is it's opening your awareness to it and making you critique it. I know that sounds like I'm making excuses for a lot of the stuff that he says that is offensive, but I genuinely think that his type of humor is a step up from a lot of the stuff that we see, which I think is just inappropriate these days, because you should always punch up and not punch down.
I disagree entirely that any of his humor is bigoted or racist. I think he's the most unracist person. I don't know about bigotry. No, I've watched him from day one, and I don't find anything. I know he pushes the envelope in many areas. He pushes the envelope, and some of it makes me cringe, and I understand why he's doing it as his platform of comedy. But I don't find him in any way, shape, or form racist or bigoted. I'm not saying he may not be if I was able to look at it through different eyes or hear it through different ears with an explanation as to why you find that. I'm open to that.
I'm not saying I do, Pete. I'm just saying that we are all conscious enough to know that it's not. What I'm saying is I hear other people making that accusation.
Yeah. It's a kind of humor. And we've all watched comedians for, I've been always watching comedians before there was stand-ups on TV and the whole bit, all through for many, many, many years. He does humor differently than a lot of people. And unless you're very smart and clever and understand what he's doing and why he's doing it, even when he explains to, like everyone thinks he's picking on fat people all the time. He will say, I've never said anything nice about fat people, but then he'll say, they're an easy target, aren't they, kind of thing, and you'll laugh, but then you'll unravel it and you go, hang on a minute,
why am I laughing? Yeah, exactly.
There's if you get a chance to have a look at him, Steve Merchant, and who's the sounds funny describing
I know
him.
you mean.
The little guy.
Like orange.
Hey, no, there's
what's his name? Carl Pilkington.
Yeah, no, not Carl. There's actually
Warwick.
Yes, Warwick.
The guy that played dating. Warwick dating.
We're going to change. Yes. We're going to change the title of this podcast to "Two Old Men Fumble Around for a Name."
Hey, what do you mean old?
Warwick, yeah, but it's brilliant. But Johnny Depp comes in and says things that how can Ricky Gervais get away with it? He just can. But no, you can't talk about the way they portray it is utter comedic genius. It is incredible what they get away with under the guise of it's not offensive. And it's not to me. Nothing he says is offensive to me. But I can understand why people would be outraged by some of the things he says. You know, that's what makes him a comic genius as far as I'm concerned. He's just incredible. But he does.
Do you know the Carry On movies?
Oh,
Right?
yes,
You'd be
I
old
do.
enough to
Yes.
remember them.
I saw them all.
How do you reckon they'd play out today?
Oh, my God. Totally inappropriate. Absolutely.
There's a reason why we don't see any reruns.
That's right.
Or the Benny Hill show.
I reckon they'll
Louise-
own them all now, but
Louisa started
And what
watching
about-
House. Do you remember House?
Kingswood Country.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no. I mean, oh, my God. That's as racist. as
Acropolis Now.
Yeah.
I mean,
But even
these
House.
are all
with,
shows that they were shows of their time, of an era. And I
Yes.
think at the time they were appropriate and funny. But to go back and look at them now, we can't judge them by today's standards.
No.
Like we go back and go, oh, that is racist. But that's with today's values. It's
Yeah.
not the context of when it was produced and the people it was
No.
produced by.
No. And look, yeah, well, this is an ongoing discussion with my wife who says it doesn't matter. And I'm going, well, it's not about whether it matters. It's about of what was acceptable back in the time. There weren't many people outraged by the Carry On movies because we've become more educated, more sophisticated, more understanding. And to look back at that and go, okay, that was okay then, but it's not okay now. Things change. We develop. We evolve. It's a part of the evolution.
Yeah.
If that was okay now, then we haven't evolved for a second as human beings. But we are more sophisticated. We understand that there's so many more impacts. My God, life is so unbelievably complex to what it was when I was growing up. It was so simple. But now
Wasn't it?
it's not. And that's fine and dandy. One of the things.
Go on.
Oh, sorry, Fenton. I'm already working. Don't tell the homeowner. I'm on the phone. Mate, don't bring us into your corrupt world of cheating on your boss. I mean, we're not playing the part, mate. The more I learn about Christian history, the more I realize the depth of the research in Life of Brian. Absolutely. You cannot make that film with that accuracy without having a great understanding about the life of Jesus. I mean, it was beautiful. Look, time to just about wrap up. What I really want to talk about next week, and I ran this past Rich today, I had an epiphany. Which wasn't inspired per se by the discussion between Piers Morgan and what's his name, Myers.
Yes, is it Stephen Meyer?
Stephen Meyer.
It was design advocate.
Yeah, it was different. But what I got out of it was this incredible idea that I thought of, and I'm sure it's not unique to what I thought of. For me, it's unique. And that is that imagine the world just being about a creator. Like God doesn't exist, the Bible doesn't exist, forget about all that. There was a creator that created all of the world. And it wasn't to the point when people decided to adopt the God and then make it theirs. Like God's ours, so we're going to name him. We're going to say what his powers are. We're going to do everything. We're going to create a religion. We're going to do all of this stuff because we believe there's a God. And I'm quite happy with the plausible idea that there may be a creator who actually created everything on Earth, or created the Big Bang to allow for the existence of life through evolution. And I just got this idea and I thought, that could be plausible. What if there is just a creator? It's not religious, nothing to do with God, it's nothing to do with atheism, it's nothing. There could be a creator who created everything for us.
Just the one.
The problem when we're bogged down in that is when we associate that with God, because everything about God is man-made. The name, the power, everything about it is we came up with that.
Anthropomorphism.
What if there was just a creator that created everything? We don't need to adopt it. We don't need to name it. It might have been a creator that just came along and created stuff and then went on holiday, and we haven't seen him since. Why would we assume that a creator would even want to have a relationship with us? What if it's just an entity of power, of whatever? And
the other
somehow,
possibility, Rowie, is that you've been smoking too much weed.
This was on the back of 17 joints. I'll give you that. I mean, it may or may no.
Both and.
But yes, I hear you. I hear you.
Nothing at all. We can do away with the whole, even for a moment, science and religion and the God thing, which by strip it all back and go, what about let's look at the possibility of just being a creator?
Well, let's not burn it out now, but Rich, does this fit within your box, that possibility?
In a strange way, it does. So it'd be an interesting, or at least there's a big overlap, at least. So it'd be interesting to see.
Well, what was the
God,
other
Rowie
option?
and Rich agreeing. What's the world coming to?
But didn't you, Rich, say as an alternative, a part of that, the overlap would be God without religion? Was that your other
Yeah. I
option?
was like, maybe that's, or as I say sometimes, I'm an atheist who believes in God, or there's that kind of tension there, and I think there'd be something worth talking about. What's the relationship between like that and everything that people are doing with that idea, and can you separate it?
We've got to have Luke on board for this one.
Yeah.
So
There's a
look
lot
at all
stuff
if you look at all the famous atheists, Rich, like Hitchens and Dawkins and whatever, and think about their argument is always from an atheistic perspective about God. Let's look at the possibility of not talking about God and it just being a creator who created everything for whatever reason we don't know and we don't need to know, and who may not value a conversation with us or us interacting with them in the slightest. It may just be it created, and we don't need to get on board and adopt them and make them ours.
But then it comes back down to semantics, really, doesn't it? Because, if you're calling it God, some people call it the universe, some people call it Mother Nature. If it's not a conscious entity, is it a God?
Yeah. I love the idea. I could get on board with believing that everything was a creation, because then it would solve the argument of the God of the gaps and all of that stuff. We go, hang on a minute, could just be a creator. Who knows? And I'd love to explore it more with more learned minds like you guys and Luke and Suresh and stuff, just to see where it could go. And I just think it's a fascinating idea.
Yeah, it'd be interesting, wouldn't it?
Yeah. It shouldn't just be God and atheism. That doesn't make any sense. There's the possibility of doing away all of that for a second and pushing it aside and just look at the possibility of there being a creator through vast energy, or, I don't know. I'm going
to go watch The Matrix again.
That'll be our a study session, I reckon. Perfect.
Yeah. Is there any way I could be sort of rewarded financially by pushing this idea forward? Is there a thesis or,
I don't know.
Well, you're going to get rewarded by monetization of this particular channel.
Correct. Well, but that would be nice. So if you'd like to donate,
I think the closest you're going to get is Fenton will buy your beer next time you're in California.
That's very safe, Fenton. If I'm coming to California, mate, you buy me more than one beer, I'll give you the big tip. The closest I'm getting to California is Italy in the next couple of years, where my daughter's getting married. So, yeah. Should we wrap it up?
As far as I'm concerned, we need to get the T-shirt done with rule number 1 on it, the golden rule. But I was doing some research on the internet the other day about rules, and I found out there is a rule on the internet called Rule 34. I'm not going into detail. Do your own research. Rule 34.
Okay, I'm not
saying
googling. I'm not googling that at work.
I'll put in
Rule 34.
Rule 34. Is it anything along the lines of hang on a second, Fenton? I would love to.
He's researching it. He shouldn't.
What's he going?
Don't do it.
Don't do it. Well,
did you find it?
At this moment, Fenton, I have you to go by, or Jason Jordan sitting in front of me. And at the moment, mate, you are you're a gold medal as far as being an Olympian goes, and Jace didn't even get a bronze. So I'm just yeah. Rule 34. I thought it might have been the answer to the universe.
No, nothing so.
Well, that was 43, wasn't it?
That's
Is that a
42.
coincidence? Hey?
Did you find out what the rule is yet?
Who?
Or you're not looking?
All right. I'll play your stupid game. Hang on. Rule 34. Rule 34. If it exists, there is porn of it. What the hell? Why did I expect anything slightly above?
Rule 34. If it exists, there's porn of it.
Okay.
That's the internet. That's what we live with. I didn't make the rule.
No, but you did spread the Okay. Rule 34.
I just hope it doesn't include this show.
Not yet. Not yet. Anything's possible. Well, Fenton's having a good time, mate. Don't you have some work to do? What's your boss's name? You need to be held accountable.
I'm gonna call him.
Yeah, I don't know
what's
what
your boss's number.
I don't know what
Fenton's boss.
I don't know what life's like in California, mate, but yeah, we work for a living.
All I know is this episode should have stopped 10 minutes ago.
Only 10.
I'm sure this is. Oh, you can't see it. This is only green tea. It's on a green screen.
Yeah,
So it
I was
doesn't
watching it.
He's holding up the green tea in the green screen.
Seriously, Rich, can you disconnect him somehow?
Somehow. Oh,
All right. I think we'll wrap it up. Fenton, you're the Lone Ranger tonight, brother. Thank you so much for being a part of the podcast. If we can gather our senses, we may do this again next Wednesday, which will be the 28th of August, 2024. Oh my God, that means it's nearly the end of August already.
Mm-hmm.
We started this 5 minutes ago. Yes, available, of course, when we finish broadcasting on Facebook. But right now, it is live on YouTube. But it is time to say good night. Thank you so much for your company. Thanks, Jace. Thanks, Rich. And, of course, thanks for the amazing Dave Templeman, Labor member in the seat of Mandurah.
Oh, he's muted himself early.
My microphone is done as usual and switched itself off for no apparent reason. Thanks, guys. Take care. Have a good week.
Brilliant.
See you soon.
Ta-ra.